What if the abundant life felt real to us every day? What if you could wake up with peace and joy and feel excited about life and have energy and have hope? But a lot of us are stuck in this place of feeling like, isn't there more? God, I'm doing all the right things and I'm still not full of hope and joy and peace. In fact, I feel kind of drained. I feel foggy. I feel sad. There's times that I feel hopeless and depressed. Why am I not overcoming this? What is wrong with me? Well, that's exactly how I felt. A couple months ago, I realized something that I'd completely overlooked for years. And whenever I finally figured that out, it changed everything for me. But before I tell you that, I really have to tell you the truth of the depths of where I was. Hi, I'm Jenny. Welcome to my channel. Let's talk about it while I make Easter morning cinnamon rolls. I remember sitting in the floor of my closet just crying, heartbroken. It felt like betrayal because I was alone. There was no one here. There was no one to hold my hand. There was no one to put their arm around me. And I just felt so forgotten inside of the very thing that I worked so hard to build. And in that place of feeling so alone and so forgotten, my nervous system was so on edge. I was having weird health problems. My mind felt so foggy, so confused. I just couldn't make sense of anything. I was just in this darkness. And like spiritually, I knew that there was a spiritual attack going on. But in this place of turmoil and in this place of darkness, God kept sending me people that would give me the word rest. And so I knew one thing for sure, that even though that I didn't understand what was going on, I felt like I knew that the Lord was doing it intentionally, and I knew that there was a purpose and that I had to trust him and that he was calling me without a doubt to rest. Well, there was actually 3 things that really brought me out of this fog and that God taught me in this season that I don't think he could have ever taught me in any other way. One was theological, one was physical, and one was mental. That was a shift that God gave me that changed everything, that I believe will change everything for you too. But first, let's talk about the theology. Now, over the past few years, God had really been showing me the theology of salvation. Like salvation, the word in the Greek is sozo. Many of you probably know this. It means saved. It means healed. It means delivered. It means made whole. It's not just going to heaven for eternity. It's having an abundant life now. And I'm like, yes, that's what I believe. That's what I want to believe. That's what I believe is available. Why am I not living it? And then God started showing me in Romans 14:17, when it talks about like the kingdom of heaven isn't a matter of eating or drinking, but it's righteousness, peace, and joy, that the kingdom of heaven, like a matter of the kingdom of heaven, includes peace and joy. Those are emotions. Like God's kingdom includes emotions. Like to be in his kingdom here on earth, to be exercising from his kingdom is to be exercising from a place of peace and joy. That was life-giving to me because I wanted to know that I could walk in the kingdom here on earth and then it would result in peace and joy and not just like sacrifice and surrender and hard times and all those things, but that God actually like cares that we walk in peace and in joy. Those are beautiful things. And then I started looking up that word righteousness, because righteousness to me has always been like this like kind of foreign concept, like, okay, it's righteousness. That means like doing the right thing, right? And I'm so not good at like the works thing, like just pretending or working hard in my flesh. I just kind of stink at those things. Like it either has to come from my heart or it's not coming at all. That's just kind of the person that I am, and it's caused a lot of hardships in my life because I'm really bad at faking things and pretending like, I have peace or joy when I don't. And so when I started looking into that word righteousness, it was like the state of rightness. Like to me, that's deeply tied with wholeness. And so if you're living in that state, it's not about what you're doing. It's about a state you're already in. And then what you do will be expressed out of that rightness. And that gave me so much hope. So now I'm starting to understand theologically that there really is more for me. There is an abundant life. There is a place of like deeply being right, like things being set right. And that also involved an output of my emotions being peaceful and joyful. Now that was great news, but it very much contrasted from where I was currently sitting. But once I understood that God actually cares about our emotional life, I started noticing patterns in my life that had been draining me for years, but until then, I couldn't see them. You see, there were some patterns that I was stuck in that felt very godly that I couldn't see. One of them was that I was over functioning. There was areas in my life where I was taking the consequences off of other people and putting them onto myself because it felt generous, it felt godly, it felt kind, and all these things. But God wasn't actually asking me to do that. He wasn't asking me to take away other people's consequences in order to relieve their stress, to put the stress on me, because then when the stress was on me, I wasn't able to live in that righteousness, peace, and joy. Ultimately, there was a lack of boundaries in me that I didn't realize, which is funny because I feel like I have really strong boundaries. I feel like I have no problem with telling people no and things like that. And so, even for me, that felt like I had strong boundaries, there were places in my life that I wasn't having boundaries because subconsciously I felt like I needed to do these things to earn a place of safety. There was areas that I actually needed more boundaries that I couldn't see because those things felt like generosity. They felt like me, kind of taking one for the team so that other people could have the pay or the security or the benefit, and that I would just silently just keep bearing more and more load, even though these, I cared about other people. And so I would allocate resources that probably should have gone to me to others because I wanted them to be cared for. I wanted them to be well. It's also kind of like enlightening to be like, you know, realize that God wasn't asking my nervous system to take one for the team, that I thought that I had to do that because I thought that that would prove that I was good enough or that I was worthy of people loving or being loyal to. But it's just not the truth. When it comes down to it, we're all broken and we just tend to operate from our places of fear and survival, I think subconsciously. But anyways, these places that I needed to stop over functioning, where I needed to stop, these places that I was over functioning and where I was being generous were actually draining the life out of me. And God wasn't actually the one asking me to do that. I was asking me to do that. And I was doing that because it made me feel more secure at the time until everything collapsed. And then I realized something else that I had completely overlooked. The mental thing that changed everything was so big for me. But before I share that, I have to tell you that I kind of had forgotten that I had a physical body and that my physical body had physical needs too. I have loved science and psychology and all the things, and I had understood how stress produces cortisol, and that causes hardening of the heart of the arteries and lowers your immune system and has all sorts of consequences on your health. But me being younger and, being a high capacity person, I think I just kind of basically ignored my body most of my life and taken it for granted until it got to the point where my nervous system was like on fire. I, for most of the times, didn't feel depressed, but there was a bout there when I had like clinical depression. I'd had it one other time very early in life, around 18 or 19. So I knew what it was like. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to shower. I didn't want to see people. I just completely shut down. And for me, that usually follows time where I'm still trying to fight. I'm still trying to fight for my place or for security or for justice. And then when you realize that none of your fight is going to help, that there's no hope in fighting, then sometimes you go into collapse or you go into freeze. And that's where I went. And I went to a very dark place. And in that dark place, it's so hard to describe. If you've been there, you know the weight of that. And it's like spiritually, it's dark and heavy. Physically, you're exhausted and drained, and mentally, you're completely hopeless. At this point, I actually went and sought out a doctor that would match my beliefs about the physical body. And I found someone that was very balanced between medicine and functional. It was a functional nurse practitioner, and she was actually looking into the core problems, doing blood work, doing cortisol testing, and really looking into the functioning of the different parts of my body, and not just prescribing me things to treat symptoms, but really trying to find the root causes and work on those. And whenever I would feel triggered, I would be triggered for the rest of the day. It's like I had no regulation. I was so dysregulated in my nervous system that once I was triggered for the rest of the day. But what I realized is if I could go take like a really, really, really hot Epsom salt bath and soak in that Epsom salt in the hot water, that it would physically help me come down. It would bring me down 2 or 3 notches. It might not take me all the way down to zero, but it would significantly help me. Another thing that I started recognizing was the impact of things like circadian rhythm. Like the Lord created the earth in certain ways, I believe, to help us and to help us reset. Like back in the day, Adam and Eve lived like on the land, they slept on the ground. I would go outside and I would put a towel down in my backyard and just lay in the sun for like 10-15 minutes every day. And it was like I just needed these practices that were energizing and intentional for my physical body to be reset. I got on different supplements and I started just being intentional about nourishing and caring for my body and not just pushing down its needs and over functioning. All those things helped stabilize me, but it wasn't the thing that actually changed everything. The real breakthrough happened in my mind. You see, God is redemptive. There was something happening in the turmoil that I couldn't see that was actually one of the biggest blessings and breakthroughs. And I think that He might be doing it in your life as well. But before I talk to you about that, I need to talk to you about the biggest breakthrough I had, which was in my mind. When I realized that my thoughts were the things that were ultimately draining me and draining my body or causing energy and hope in my body, then that clicked and changed everything for me. You realize, you see, our thoughts produce our emotions, and really intense negative emotions of hopelessness and fear and doubt and confusion drain our physical bodies. And when your physical body is drained, it is so hard to function. Like they always say, the enemy attacks when you're like hungry or tired, right? Like that's why the enemy came to Jesus after 40 days of fasting in the desert. Like he came whenever he was physically drained. And we can physically drain ourselves by having a ton of draining emotions. And those draining emotions really wear us out and they tire us. And those things are being driven and produced by what we believe and what our perception is. And so I started recognizing this and I would sit down to journal. And when I would journal, I would think a thought like, nobody cares about me and I'm not valued. And it doesn't matter how much I did, nobody cares that I'm alone in this darkness and that I am sad and that I'm struggling. And that produced very negative emotions. And so I would sit and I would say like, okay, God, how do I need to think about this so that I can have energy? And so that, because, Jesus died to give us life, and life has to do with energy. Energy and life are tied together. When we die, I dare say that all the energy is left from our bodies. There's no energy left, right? Like we have a dead body that is lifeless. And so energy is directly tied to the abundant life. So I would notice a shift in my body. So it's like you sit there and you're aware of your feelings, you're aware of how it's impacting your body. And so those hopeless emotions, those produced sadness in me, produced despair, turmoil. And so then I would search with the Lord and say, okay, God, how do I need to feel about this? Okay, what if I believe that I do matter and that I am valued, but people are just operating out of their own wounds? They're operating out of their own hurts, which is funny because during this time, Jesus also gave me a verse out of John 3 where Jesus had done all these miracles and all these people were like, yay, Jesus, we want to follow you. And it said that basically he didn't trust them. He didn't entrust his heart to them, or he didn't entrust himself to them because he knew what was in them. And I think what he knew that was in them was their brokenness, was their need for safety, was their fear, because that could turn on him at any moment. So he knew it wasn't a safe place to put his value into their eyes because of their brokenness. And that was kind of the same revelation I had to come to, is that my value and worth isn't reflected by people's care for me. It's not reflected by their coming to me or helping me or reaching out to me. Like my value is my value because I'm his, and I'm valuable because of him and the value that he's placed on me. And Jesus did not take it as evidence that he was unvaluable, the injustice that was done to him. Like if he would have looked at the evidence of the betrayal, the injustice, the wrong trial, the murder, and looked at that and taken that as solid evidence that he was not worthy, that he was not valuable, that he wasn't enough, then that would be true, right? But we know that's not true. That just because we've been through extreme harm, just because we've been, and I'm not saying that I was extremely harmed. I'm just saying that, if we have been extremely harmed, if we have been abused, that is what Jesus went through as well. And that was not proof for him that he wasn't enough. And so we can't take that as proof for us that we're not valuable, that we're not worthy. So we have to align our thoughts with truth, that we are valued, that we are worthy, that we are enough, apart from what happens to us and how we are treated. And those thoughts shift the inside of you. They shift the energy. You go from powerlessness to stability. I believe that that's practically how we actually renew our minds. And so that is one of the biggest keys that I've learned in this season, is to recognize when I'm operating in fear. And fear has to do with powerlessness and sadness and doubt and all those things. And instead, like 2 Timothy 1:7, God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. Taking those thoughts and coming back into alignment with power and love, and that brings a sound mind. And when we have a sound mind, then our body feels energized and we produce dopamine and we don't produce cortisol. And then our body, and we can actually enter into, our nervous system can enter into the rest and digest stage and not the fight and flight stage. And then when we can rest well, then our body can recover and our immune system is stronger. And when our immune system is stronger, we overcome. Guys, it's all tied together. And I believe these thoughts that we have in our mind are spiritual agreements. We are either partnering with doubt and fear and a spirit of fear, or we are partnering with hope and with life and with Holy Spirit himself, which the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, and peace, right? And so it's in our minds that we can worship the truth and worship the Lord, or we can agree with the enemy and partner with him. So our bodies, our minds, and our spirits are all attached and interact with one another. And as they attach and they interact with each other, I believe there's physical things we can do to our body that make an impression on our mind and our spirit. I think that there's spiritual things that we can do that make an impression on our body and our mind. I believe that there's things we can do in our mind that make an impression on our body and our spirit. And that's kind of what I talked about most today, was the mind things that make an influence on the spiritual and the physical parts of our body. Now, what I couldn't see was that with all that I was carrying, with all that was on my plate, with my lack of boundaries, with my overfunctioning, with being a mom of 5 and homeschool hybriding and helping run a school and a church and rentals and a micro venue and all the other things that I do, that I did not have any space on my plate to do what I believe God actually wanted me to do. For years, I wanted to create a YouTube channel, but I felt like if I did, it would take away from the quote ministry that the Lord had me in. And during this dark season, God sent me a dream. And in the dream, he specifically released me to start this YouTube channel. Now, I love strategy and I love marketing and I love psychology and I love business and I love lots of things that I think God used those talents to help me build this channel. But I think having 9,500 followers in less than 3 months is somewhat miraculous, especially for a spirit-filled creator. And so I believe that God breathed on this channel and helped me in a way that I would have never had capacity for before this collapse in my life. And so though God doesn't ever mean for our harm, he redeems it and uses it for good. I know several people that have gone through unfair job losses recently. And in those job losses, I know that they have to feel betrayed, that they have to feel just heartbroken that they were giving and serving and doing for these businesses just to be released unfairly. And that what I actually also see is that I think that if they were honest with themselves, they didn't really enjoy where they were, that it was safe for them, that they had an end goal, that it provided a sense of stability, but that they weren't really thriving, that they weren't really living all that they wanted to do. And so I think God graciously sometimes allows us to lose the thing that we're putting our security in, even whenever He allows it to feel like betrayal, which is so hard, because He knows that He has better. He knows that there's more, and He wants to give us that redemption. And so, if you go through something that feels so hard and so heartbreaking and so overwhelming and so not fair, just know that God can turn that and make it better than you can ever imagine. That He can bless you in ways that He would never have been able to bless you inside of that previous life. But sometimes that's hard to see, especially whenever you don't have a good, honest Christian community around you, if you don't have people that can speak truth into you and to remind you. And so during this dark season, what I realized is like, I just want a place where I can be real, where I can be honest, and where I can feel heard and understood and like I'm not crazy. And so I was bound and determined to create that. And so I am creating a community where people can have honest Christianity, where they can be guided through a framework where they can actually heal and do the deep work inside of them to close the gap between head knowledge and heart experience. If you're interested in starting that journey, I have a free mini course below that you can check out that will help you to start seeing some of the patterns you're living in and understand how intimacy with God actually cures those exact things and brings you into the life of wholeness that Jesus really meant for us to have. Check out the link below.